Somewhere between Tesla halts production and there's no silver left for EVs or solar, the internet just collided with something most people never think about. The future isn't powered by money. It's powered by electrons, and silver is one of the best highways those electrons ever get. Now listen, people keep sharing this headline, Tesla halts production, no silver for EVs or solar, because this is not just a precious metal story. It's a physics story, and physics does not negotiate. First, the hard truth. I have not seen credible mainstream confirmation that Tesla has halted production specifically because of a silver shortage. If you saw it on social media, that doesn't mean it's true. It means it spreads well. But here's the part people miss. You don't need a public halt for a shortage to be real. In real life, shortages show up quietly first. Procurement teams start renegotiating behind closed doors, lead times stretch, suppliers get selective, engineers redesign parts to use less material, a rollout gets delayed and the public gets a polite excuse like timing or optimization, and by the time you get the dramatic headline, the supply chain has been screaming for months. So the real question isn't, did Tesla tweet a halt? The real question is silver becoming a constraint that forces behavior changes across the supply chain? Because that's how shortages actually begin. Quietly. Now here's why this is even on the table. Silver demand is not coming from one place. It's coming from multiple machines of the modern world at the same time. Solar, electrification, grid upgrades, power electronics, high reliability contacts. And the reason this turns into a physics story is simple. Silver isn't just valuable because people like it. Silver is valuable because it performs. When industries depend on performance, you can't just swap it out like a brand of soda. You can redesign, you can reduce usage, you can try substitutes, but you cannot pretend the need disappears. Now let's talk about the part almost nobody understands. Supply doesn't just respond. Because silver is weird. A lot of silver doesn't get mined because someone wanted silver. It gets mined as a byproduct of other mining, copper, lead, zinc, gold. So even if silver demand spikes, silver supply doesn't instantly surge because the mining decisions are being driven by other metals. That means the solution to rising silver demand is not open the faucet. The short-term solution is inventory, stockpiles, recycling, and eventually demand destruction, where someone gets priced out. That is why shortages feel so brutal, because the market can't just make more fast. Now bring solar into this. Solar is not a hobby anymore, it's industrial scale, and silver is used inside photovoltaic manufacturing because it's an elite conductor and it helps move current efficiently. And yes, the solar industry has been trying to thrift silver. They reduce how much they use per panel. But here's the trap. If you use less per panel, but you build far more panels, total silver demand can stay high. And that's what people don't understand. Thrifting doesn't automatically solve the problem if the entire world is scaling. And solar doesn't get to play games with reliability. Panels are expected to last decades, so manufacturers can't just swap materials and hope. If you make the wrong change, you don't pay tomorrow. You pay years later through failures, warranty claims, and reputation damage. That's why this story isn't simple. Now let's talk about EVs, because this is where people argue in circles. They argue about how much silver is in a car. And that argument misses the bigger truth. EVs are electronics on wheels. Power electronics, high current, high reliability, harsh environments, heat, vibration, time. And when power systems get more demanding, the tolerance for cheap materials drops, especially in contacts and switching components where failure is not allowed. That's why silver keeps showing up in boring places nobody films. Contacts, connectors, switchgear, relays, high-performance coatings. Because silver helps parts survive arcing and repeated switching. That's the physics part people keep pointing at. Not because it's magical, because it's functional. Now, why do people keep naming Tesla, Samsung, and Apple? Because they sit at the intersection of the demand engines. Vehicles electrifying, devices staying dense, infrastructure upgrading, and even if each device uses only a small amounts times massive scale becomes a big number. 1 grain of sand is nothing. A beach is something. That's how industrial demand sneaks up on people. And this is where the scrambling idea comes from. Not because we have a public memo saying, we are out of silver. That's not how big companies talk. But because big companies at scale do not wait for shortages to slap them in public. They secure supply. They renegotiate. They diversify sources. They plan early. Because the cost of being wrong is not an article. The cost of being wrong is a delayed product cycle. Silver isn't one market, it's 3 overlapping worlds. Screen silver, price on a chart. Deliverable silver, metal that can actually be delivered through the official pipes. Movable silver, deliverable metal that can be mobilized fast enough to reach the right buyer on the timeline that matters. When the market is calm, these worlds behave like one. When the market is tight, they separate. And that's how you get a world where the chart says one thing and procurement says another thing. That's how panic headlines become believable. Now, about 2026. Why does that year keep showing up? Because it's close enough to plan and far enough away for fear to build. Here's the clean version. We don't know the exact silver balance for 2026 today. What we do know is the trend. Multiple sectors are pulling on the same metal. Solar keeps scaling. Electrification keeps scaling. Infrastructure keeps scaling. And supply is not infinitely responsive. So when people say there's physically not enough silver to build the tech for 2026, what they really mean is this. There may not be enough silver available on the terms everyone assumed: price, lead time, reliability, and deliverability, without forcing redesigns, delays, and allocation behavior. That's the real story, not we ran out. But the buffer is thinning, and once buffer's thin, the world changes. Because shortages don't start with a dramatic announcement. They start with behavior, longer lead times, higher premiums, supplier selectivity, redesign pressure, quiet triage. Now let's answer the big question. What would Tesla Halts production actually look like if this ever got real? It wouldn't look like a dramatic press conference. It would look like corporate triage. Prioritize the highest margin lines. Delay certain builds. Pause something and call it maintenance or retooling, because that's how corporations speak. And that's why this story is so easy to weaponize online, because the truth is subtle, and subtle truth is easy to turn into loud rumor. So here's the conclusion, clean and honest. I am not confirming Tesla halted production because of silver, but I am saying the underlying fear is not random. In a world electrifying fast, silver becomes more than a metal. It becomes a constraint candidate, because the modern world keeps building systems where failure is not allowed, and silver sits in the parts that prevent failure. So the real question is not, is this headline true? The real question is, does this stay a price story, or does it become an availability story? Because once it becomes availability, the market stops negotiating and starts allocating. And that is when physics wins.